The gates of Windsor stood quiet on the morning the story began to spread. Yet within hours, phones across Britain were lighting up with single name, Camilla, not because of scandal, not because of controversy, but because of something far more human, a question about what comes next, and who will carry the weight of a role few ever imagined she would hold. Prince William, a man usually measured in his public words, had said something that sent ripples through royal commentary circles, and by afternoon, headlines were forming faster than palace officials could respond. But before diving into what was actually said, it's worth pausing to understand why this moment resonated so deeply, and why the public's relationship with Camilla has been decades in the making. To understand the weight of any statement about Camilla's future, one must first revisit her long and complicated journey into public acceptance. For years following the death of Diana, Princess of Wales, Camilla occupied an uneasy position in the national consciousness. Many Britons struggled to reconcile her role in the breakdown of Charles and Diana's marriage with her later, quieter effort to rebuild trust through decades of steady public service. Royal biographer Penny Junor, who has written extensively about the Prince of Wales and his relationships, documented the slow rehabilitation in detail, noting how Camilla gradually shifted from tabloid villain to a figure increasingly seen as dependable and grounded. That transformation did not happen overnight, and it did not happen by accident. It was built through consistent charity work, patronages supporting literacy, domestic abuse survivors, and osteoporosis research, a cause deeply personal to her, given her mother's death from condition. By the time Queen Elizabeth II issued her historic statement in February 2022, expressing her sincere wish that Camilla be known as Queen Consort when Charles ascended the throne, much of the groundwork for public acceptance had already been quietly laid. That announcement, made during the Platinum Jubilee year, was seen by royal historians as a deliberate and symbolic gesture. The late monarch used her own authority to settle a question that had lingered for years. When Charles became king in September 2022, Camilla's title shifted once more, this time to Queen, a moment covered extensively by outlets such as the BBC, and confirmed through official Buckingham Palace communications. Now, years into his reign, attention has increasingly turned toward the future. Not just of King Charles III, but of the generation that will follow him. William, as Prince of Wales and heir apparent, occupies a unique position in these conversations. Any remark he makes about the monarchy's structure, its members, or its trajectory tends to be parsed with extraordinary care, precisely because his words carry the implicit weight of a future king. This is why, when commentary emerged suggesting William had spoken about Camilla's continuing role and her legacy within the family, the public reaction was immediate and widespread, even though the actual substance of his remarks was far less sensational than certain headlines implied. Public reporting indicates that William has, on multiple occasions, spoken warmly about Camilla in ways that reflect a broader, gradual normalization of her presence within the family narrative. Royal correspondents covering official engagements have noted his supportive body language beside her at state functions, and his public statements have generally emphasized unity, continuity, and respect for his father's marriage. It is this pattern of behavior, rather than any singular explosive revelation, that likely forms the basis for renewed speculation about her future standing, particularly regarding what happens when William eventually becomes king himself. This is where much of the public confusion tends to arise. Under long-standing constitutional convention, the title and role of Queen Consort or Queen applies specifically to the wife of a reigning monarch. When Charles's reign eventually ends, Camilla's formal role as queen will end with it, a reality well understood by constitutional historians, such as Robert Hardman, whose biography of King Charles offers detailed insight into the monarchy's structural rules and royal succession. What remains uncertain, however, is not a matter of secret palace maneuvering, but simply the natural unfolding of tradition. Camilla, like other former consorts before her, would be expected to take on a life outside the primary spotlight, though the specifics of any future title or arrangement have not been formally announced by the palace. This nuance matters, especially in an era where headlines often outpace verified information. Sensational claims about stunning announcements frequently emerge from a real kernel of public reporting stretched into something more dramatic than intended. What likely happened, based on available reporting, is that William made supportive remarks about Camilla during a public appearance or interview setting, remarks that were then amplified across social media and reinterpreted as something far more significant than a reaffirmation of family unity. This pattern is not unique to William or Camilla. It reflects a broader trend in how royal news circulates in the digital age, where nuance is often the first casualty of virality. Still, the underlying sentiment behind such stories deserves genuine attention, because it reflects a real and evolving relationship between the two royals. Since becoming Prince of Wales, William has taken on a more visible leadership role within the family, particularly during moments of institutional strain, including King Charles's cancer diagnosis in early 2024 and Catherine, Princess of Wales's own health journey that same year. During this period, royal watchers noted a quiet but firm sense of stability radiating from Kensington Palace, with William stepping into a more prominent public presence while his father focused on treatment. Camilla, meanwhile, took on additional responsibilities, representing the monarchy at various engagements traditionally reserved for the sovereign, a fact widely reported by outlets including Sky News and The Times. This dynamic, Camilla stepping into a larger supporting role during a family health crisis, may be part of what fuels ongoing public curiosity about her long-term place within the monarchy's future. When institutions face uncertainty, symbolic reassurance becomes especially important, and any statement from a senior royal, particularly one as consequential as William, tend to be read as a signal of what lies ahead. It's a natural human impulse. In times of transition, people look for continuity, and Camilla's steady presence beside Charles has increasingly come to represent exactly that. It's also worth noting the historical echoes present in this moment. The British monarchy has, throughout its long history, navigated similar questions about the roles of consorts following a monarch's reign. The Queen Mother, wife of King George VI, remained a beloved public figure for decades after her husband's death, carving out a distinct identity separate from the reigning monarch. Her example is often cited by royal historians as a template for how former consorts can maintain relevance and public affection without holding formal constitutional power. Whether Camilla's future path resembles this model remains speculative, but a comparison offers useful context for understanding what such transitions have looked like historically. Similarly, Queen Alexandra, widow of King Edward VII, and later Queen Mary, widow of King George V, each carved distinct post-consort identities, showing that the monarchy has repeatedly adapted to the reality that a queen's formal title changes even as her personal influence often endures. As for the specific claim that William made a stunning announcement about Camilla's future, no verified transcript, official palace statement, or documented interview currently confirms language matching that description. What can be confirmed is a broader pattern. Consistent public support from William toward his stepmother, ongoing acknowledgement of her contributions to the monarchy, and a constitutional reality that already defines what will eventually happen to her title. Once Charles's reign concludes, the dramatic framing surrounding this story appears to stem from the amplification of ordinary royal commentary into something far more sensational than the underlying fact support. It is also worth considering how William's own approach to the monarchy has evolved since he became Prince of Wales, a title he inherited from his father in September 2022. Observers have noted a modernizing instinct in how William engages with the public, favoring candor and warmth over more guarded formality often associated with earlier generations of royals. Documentaries produced by the BBC and ITV covering his charitable work, including his environmental initiative the Earthshot Prize, have shown a prince increasingly comfortable speaking in personal terms about family, legacy, and responsibility. This shift in tone may explain why any remark involving Camilla, however routine, is now interpreted through a lens of significance that would not have applied to previous generations of royal spokespeople. Royal correspondents such as Jenny Bond and Camilla Tominey, both of whom have covered the monarchy for decades, have frequently observed that the working relationship between William and Camilla has grown steadily warmer over time, a shift documented through joint public appearances rather than private confirmation. This observable warmth, rather than any singular dramatic statement, is likely the true source of renewed public interest in what Camilla's future might look like once the throne eventually passes to William. Understanding this distinction is essential for separating factual reporting from the exaggerated framing that so often accompanies viral royal headlines. It is worth remembering, too, that public fascination with royal transitions is not new. nor is it unique to Camilla. Every generation of consorts has faced scrutiny over how their role might evolve once circumstances change. And the monarchy has historically responded not through sudden declarations, but through gradual, carefully managed adjustments communicated via official channels rather than offhand remarks. This measured approach reflects the institution's broader instinct for continuity, an instinct that has allowed it to survive centuries of political change, public criticism, and shifting cultural expectations. Understanding this historical pattern helps explain why claims of a single stunning announcement should be treated with caution, even when the underlying relationship being discussed is genuinely significant. Media analysts who study royal coverage, including academics affiliated with journalism schools in the United Kingdom, have long noted that headlines involving the monarchy tend to amplify emotional language disproportionate to the underlying facts, particularly on video platforms optimized for engagement. This does not mean the public's interest is misplaced. Rather, it reflects how modern audiences consume news about institutions they feel personally connected to, even when that connection is largely symbolic. Camilla's evolving public image and William's role in shaping perceptions of the monarchy's future both speak to a deeper public desire to understand how continuity and change coexist within one of Britain's oldest institutions. Ultimately, what this moment reveals is less about any single revelation and more about the monarchy's ongoing negotiation between tradition and modern scrutiny. Every gesture, every word, every subtle shift in tone from a future king becomes material for public interpretation, whether or not it was intended to carry deeper meaning. Camilla's journey, from a figure once viewed with public skepticism to one now widely regarded as a steadying presence within the royal family, reflects a broader story about resilience, patience, and the slow work of rebuilding trust. William's role in that story, whether through quiet gestures of support or carefully chosen public words, speaks to a monarchy attempting to balance inherited tradition with the emotional realities of a modern family navigating illness, succession, and public expectation all at once. As Britain continues to watch this transition unfold, the truth may be less about sudden announcements and more about the steady, evolving relationships that will ultimately shape the next chapter of the crown. History suggests that the monarchy rarely changes through singular dramatic declarations. Instead, it shifts gradually, through accumulated gestures, quiet reassurances, and the passage of time itself. Camilla's story, much like the institution she now represents, has always been one of patience rewarded slowly rather than transformation delivered suddenly. And perhaps that, more than any headline, is the real lesson embedded within this moment. A quiet reminder that behind every crown and every title lies a deeply human story still being written, one steady chapter at a time.